Oh, hi, everybody. We're going to be casual. We agree. Uh, I'm so glad to have Jenny Pentland. You look great. I love your earrings. Wow.
Thanks. They're cheap. Thanks.
But Jenny, it's been a long time. I've been on your case. I've been on your case to do this podcast with me, mainly because you work with me in the Crestone conferences. And the Crestone conferences for me have become the in-person, face-to-face conferences that we're doing now. And we started with having Jeff be one of the speakers, and then you came along with Jeff. And then when I got sick in August, and I had pneumonia in the hospital, you and Jeff took over all of Crestone. You took over the whole entire conference because
Mhm.
I had pneumonia and I was in the hospital, and there was Sarah Bressman, and I didn't know what to do, and there were 70 people. So how does it feel to take over a conference like that and talk to the people a little bit about and your land in Crestone?
I mean, I think it's better if I don't know when something like that's going to happen and it just gets sprung on me and then I just,
Oh, I'm sorry. You're muted somehow. Okay, go ahead.
un-
Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. Just says, can you unmute yourself so we can hear you? I don't know how you got muted.
it keeps saying the host is muting you and then saying unmuting.
Okay, so let me start again, just because
Okay.
now, Jenny, I'm so happy to have Jenny Pentland here. And you were starting to tell us about how it feels to take over for me in Crestone, because you and Jeff have been part of my Crestone conferences, which are very small, intimate conferences of the Colorado College in Crestone, which is 4 hours away from Denver, in the deep mountains. And then when I was sick in August, you took over. And how did that feel? Because then to be you got to be the stars of the show because I was in the hospital. How did you feel about that? That is what I've been trying to get you to do.
I was saying I think it was better that it just happened and was kind of sprung on me than if I would have been invited or planned on it because I probably would have panicked. But I mean, I knew that you couldn't do it, and so I wanted to do it for you to help you out. And Jeff was planning on speaking anyway about the experiences that he's had in the last 5 years, which are what led us to meeting you. And so he was ready to speak, and then but a lot of the stuff was just like signing people in and stuff that I was actually comfortable with selling your books, which are amazing and I love them. So that was easy to do. But then I did wander into the room for some reason and get put on the spot. And I was like, I think the last few years I kind of have this soundbite in my head of like, okay, there's sort of a choice you have right in this second. It's panic and run out and cry, which sounded like the better option, or just deal with it and say what I had to say, which I ended up doing because your group of people that you have are really really intelligent, sweet people, and they've all had experiences like ours. So it was easy to talk to them. They're a lovely, intimate group of people, and so it was easy. That part was easy, but then afterwards, I had a panic attack. And I had my 4-year-old with me also, so he was like under the table, and so it wasn't very professional, I'll say, but it was nice, and I liked meeting all the people that you work with and representing for you as best I can.
And you had bought my 5 acres of land in Crestone, with the plans of doing like a new age. First, you said you wanted to put a building there with kind of a museum, and then what ended up happening with that land, and it's 5 acres, is we ended up doing CE5, which is stargazing under the stars on that land. How does that feel?
Oh, I love Crestone. I love places like that. It's a dark skies community. It's in the mountains. There's not a lot of people. there's certain locals that live up there year round. There's some people who come up there just for a little chunk of time, and there's a lot of people who come up there for like the spiritual centers there. But when I learned about Crestone, and that was because of you, we stopped there to see you when I very like after we first met, and when I learned about the area, I was just kind of blown away because it was like the history of it's really interesting, and I love places that have that kind of like rich history and like just the idea that it was founded as like a place for all spiritual centers to kind of coexist in one area and be available to everybody is such a cool idea. And I know like anything with that big of an agenda, it's bound to go through like all kinds of reform and roller coaster ish scenarios, which it's been like I don't know, it was founded in like the what 50s I think or 60s. It was a while ago, but there's a lot of functioning spiritual centers up there, and there's room for more, and the people who go up there with that intention, so it's kind of like a little hub. And then I learned like just geographically how protected it is, and it's a dark skies community, so you can see the full stars at night, and it's beautiful. And parts of it reminded me of places in Hawaii that I really miss, and it's in the middle of nowhere, which is a plus for me. I loved it.
It's also on the biggest aquifer we have in Colorado.
Yeah.
That whatever's happening there, whether you're doing meditation or anything, it's 10 times magnified with water. It's like, so it's a beautiful community. I'm trying to get more people to come to the conference, and I was hoping you guys would come May, because you guys can come anytime you want and be part of it. It's so informal. The conference center is, it has big screen, it has projector, it has chairs and everything, but it's so intimate that Crestone has now become, for me, the mecca of communication and so forth. And then at night we go on your land. It's now your land, 5 acres of it, and do the meditation and I think you and Jeff have had a few sightings on that land, haven't you?
Yeah, we had like 'cause the CE5, if other people who don't know, is like a protocol that was put together by Stephen Greer, who's like the famous ufologist, the kind of face of it, if not the originator of the information or whatever. But he put together like groups or a protocol for groups to get together and kind of do this sort of group meditation to, I guess, call in phenomena or to possibly see some kind of signs of another layer of consciousness or dimension. And he's had a lot of success with that. So he takes groups of like, I think 20 or maybe more now into like dark skies areas and does the CE5 meditations. And a lot of people have experiences. So some people have more internal ones that you don't have any phenomena with. And a lot of people have the outward or the, out whatever vision of it. And yeah, we did. We led one. And my husband he's I guess he's more comfortable with the word experiencer and not contactee necessarily, but he did have when we were in Hawaii, he had an awakening is, the gentle way to put it. It wasn't gentle for him, but it was or any of us, but it was very like eye-opening for him to have those experiences. And um it's nice to be around other people that have them too. But when we were out there, because he part of what he came away with his experiences was it seems more of a natural ability to kind of call that stuff in or connect with it at will. And so he ran the CE5 when we were out there, and I was running the music, so I wasn't really able to like meditate or close my eyes. And when everybody was meditating, I saw like lights, and I was like, those are interesting because they're moving in very strange ways, which I've seen what I consider UFOs before throughout my whole life since I was a kid. I don't think they're weird. I just think, any science that we don't quite understand is like, oh, it's so weird. And then 5 minutes later, when quantum physics is introduced or whatever, then we get that that's how things actually work. It's not a big deal. And so I had seen things before, but I saw this light kind of out in the distance, and it as everybody was getting deeper and deeper into the meditation, it like I couldn't explain it any better than it kind of stopped and looked at us from over on the horizon, and it ended up coming over the CE5 and kind of slowing down and sitting there. Kind of looked like a drone, but it didn't make noise, but you could feel sort of a humming in your body maybe. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. But it didn't occur to me to like tell anybody else because we were all kind of having our own experiences. And Jeff, my husband, I did like, I'm like, hey, look. And so he looked up and he saw it, and we looked at each other. And my one son that was with me saw it. And we were all like, what do we do? And then we looked around at all the people meditating, and it's like, would you wake somebody out of an experience that they were having, or like, how do I handle this? So I didn't. I, didn't say anything until I think later that night, or maybe even the next day. But yeah, we've had other experiences up there, and like even short of like the sightings or visual experiences, when you go into that town, you just feel like I don't know if the mana, the energy of the land, the like vibration of it is just really, it's a really cool place. And it's a cool place to go to like conferences because the conference center is kind of like you said, it's casual. It's nice and casual. It's almost like a classroom, and you don't feel intimidated to participate in any way. So I love it up there, and I'm happy that we bought that land so you can continue to do stuff too. Like, so everybody kind of, that we kind of bought it with the idea that everybody would be able to use it for CE5s or any kind of meeting or conferences or anything.
Well, the irony was that I met Jeff in California Conscious Life Expo, but I was doing a conference there with Native Americans. I had Danny Many Horses. It was only Native Americans and contact and everything. And that was my birthday weekend. And Jeff did not know it was my birthday. And he sent me a video of up close and personal UFO that came right towards the car. And in his contact stance, usually he's told to turn on the car radio. And what was playing on the car radio, and I explained this to people, was the song Silent Running with Mike and the Mechanics. So Jeff, on my birthday, sends me the video of the UFO up close and comes right to the car in Hawaii. And then I went to see the video of Mike and the Mechanics, and the first frame is happy birthday to you, happy birthday. And I'm totally confused because he didn't know it was my birthday, and the ETs made him turn on the radio, and that was the song. And from that point on, it was a series of coincidences. You people left Hawaii, and evidently, if you read both Jenny's book and Jenny's dad's book, and you can talk about that, they grew up in Denver, and they were looking for a place to live. And when they finally came to the mainland, they called me for coffee, and they were 2 blocks from me in a Holiday Inn, and they didn't know I lived there. And that was too weird.
That was weird. That was really weird. The whole thing from our side was weird because when we were living in Hawaii and Jeff was having these experiences, and he sort of was just like, well, there was like a series of events. Like, I was like, okay, I'm going to finally write this book I've been talking about forever. So I wrote it, but I wrote twice as much as I should have. It was 140,000 words and it needed to be 70,000. So the whole next year I spent editing. And while I was editing, I found out at like 43 years old that I was pregnant. We weren't trying, not that we were with the other four either, for, I mean, I know how it happens. So, but it wasn't like a conscious decision. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm going to be pregnant and finish my book. And then COVID hit. So I finished my pregnancy and the book. And, then this is when Jeff was having the experiences. So our house was like, it was, would have been a good reality show. Let's just say it that way. And the stuff going on in our lives and just the way it affected us, the experiences that he was having as people and a couple and parents and all of that. Um, it was a lot. And I kind of couched it a little bit in my book. And this is something me and Paula talk about a lot, is I've been extremely intuitive my whole life. And I think a lot of us are, and learn to shut it down. I have like a form of ADHD, so I can't form like routines, including the routine of shutting shutting myself down. So it just like I've been very intuitive, and there is a chapter in my book where I talked about how I was 4 years old, which is how old my youngest is right now, and how I just went outside when I was 4, and this was like early '80s. You could do stuff like that. You just go outside and disappear, and your parents would be like, be home when the street lights come on. So that we weren't watched as much. So I went out I think it was the backyard, and I remember looking at the stars, and I had very clear communication with what later I just call my spirit parents, because I don't know what else to call them. But I knew exactly what's going to come next. I knew that my life was going to be disrupted. I knew it was because my mom was going to get famous, which she did. My mom's Roseanne Barr. I don't know if everybody knows that. Um, and I knew all that. And I was like, all right. And I kind of got the message, hold on tight, because the next, chunk of years are going to be insane. And they were. And I've always received messages. I've always had that sort of, I thought everybody just, downloaded to whatever part of either their higher self or other beings or whatever. I just thought everybody had that. So like as I got older and was like, nobody else has that except a lot of the people I'm meeting in these institutions that I ended up in. So I was like, I'm not going to tell people that. Um, but I've been highly intuitive and psychic. I've channeled, I've solved cases, I've found keys, like all those kinds of things my whole life. I usually only do it for people I know and love because it's overwhelming. There's times where I can't help it. Somebody will just be like, tapping me on the shoulder. I was in a meeting for my book with my book editor at the time, and she was recording it, and I turned around because I was like, who's bugging me right now? And there was no one there. And then for the next like 24 hours, I channeled this woman. She had a message. I had to go deliver it, that happened. But she sent me the video later, and it's hilarious because I'm very much trying to be in the real world and struggling. And it's funny to watch now, but that's been a struggle my whole life. I've been silent about it because anything paranormal or not understood yet, as I said earlier, gets deemed like insane, or like people are like programmed to just like tell you that's not happening, or you're crazy, or roll their eyes at you when you talk about that kind of stuff. So I've learned to kind of couch it a little bit. But so I've always been like that. It doesn't scare me. I've had scary experiences, but I've overcome them, and I've learned how to protect myself, so it doesn't scare me. So when my husband had his first experience, which was seeing the craft outside of the car, the radio was going crazy. It was playing snippets of different songs, just a lot of it was very, very much like the movie Close Encounters. It was almost identical. Like he watches that movie like, once a month, and gets that look in his eye of just like, I know somebody out there understands what I've been through. So when he was going through that, I had just had a baby, I think like 2 weeks before that. So he would get up in the middle of the night and be like, I have to go. I have to go to the volcano. And I was like, okay, just please like try not to die, because I'm laying here with all your kids and a baby. I have 5 sons. They range from now 24 to 4, and they were all home at that time because of COVID. So, I was trying to keep the house a little bit sane with the kids watching their dad basically have this close encounters of the third kind of experiences. And I wasn't afraid, and it didn't throw me off in that way. But, I kind of was like, it, it threw the reality. And so did COVID, and so did having a baby, and so did a lot of other things that were going on in my life. Was probably like the most vulnerable I've ever been in my whole life. And so I think even being in that vulnerable state made me even more sort of intuitive at that time. So Jeff would come home with messages that he'd received, and they made sense to me, a person who's been reading about the paranormal and those kind of experiences my whole life. They didn't make sense to him. He didn't know what the things he was saying meant. And they were like kind of catchphrasy. Like it's not something you could just pull out of your butt or whatever. Like he was really hearing these things. And it was a lot. But I remember one day he came down the stairs, and I was watching Gaia Network because that was my favorite. Like I wouldn't pay for any of the other ones, but I paid for that. And I was watching Gaia, and I think Paula, you were on, and you were talking to Ricardo. What's his last name? Gonzalez. Ricardo Gonzalez. Yeah, and you guys were talking, and he came down the stairs and he looked at the TV and he said, I'm going to talk to her one day and I'm going to talk to him one day. And I was like, great. And then he went back upstairs. So, through all these weird turns of events, and because I had to go back to the mainland to do a book tour because my book got published in that time, um, when I did go back to the mainland, we had a house for sale. I had no liquid cash. Like it was one of those situations where it was like playing beat the bank on a massive level. I was staying with my best friend in Orange County with four of my kids, and it was pure chaos. And he came out to the mainland, and I found out about Conscious Life Expo, and I said, "Hey, you should really go to this," because he was really struggling to find a community. And I said, you should look at this and go to this. I don't know how it got in my email or how I found it. Like, I think it was through a random friend of his from the Hypnotherapy Institute that he went to, had sent it to him. And it happened to be like near Orange County. It was in LA, like an hour drive. And I was like, but we can't afford it. Like, we can't afford it. And then the day before, I think my book money came through. And I was like, that's it. Here's, you're going to this thing. I don't care, you're going. And we got him the pass. And that was how, he was able to, he went around and saw you. I think Ricardo, he may have even seen there, but he saw you and he was like, I need to talk to you. And he approached you. I don't know if you want to tell that story instead of me, but I know you were like sick of everybody at that point, and you were like, I'm never coming to another one of these. And he said, can I talk to you? And you're like, no, 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 I'm busy. And then he's like, okay, another time. And he started to walk away. And I think you were like, fine. And then they've been constantly texting and friends ever since. Paula really understands what he went through and has her whole collection of all this journalism to draw from, and you can say, oh, that sounds like this person's story and this happened there. And it's been really healing and good for him to know that he's not like completely alone on that level, and that other people do understand, and it's not this like, it's something that does happen. And the phenomenon that we don't understand is very real. Now it's funny because it's been like 3 years that we're on the mainland and everybody's like, yeah, New Jersey has UFOs over it 24/7. And so there's just like that aspect of, okay, like, the timing, divine timing kind of things is really good. But he went back to Hawaii to take a job. So I'm in Colorado right now with four of my kids. And that's a whole nother, like, we're just like, let's just keep seeing how much I can take.
Yeah. Well, no, it's an adventure. Life is an adventure. And you're right. The thing is,
Mhm.
there was all these people. It's very, very difficult for me to have all these people come up and tell their story. And then I'm half
Yeah.
exhausted. I don't know what to say because actually, I think there's a place, and I think you'd be good at to listen because all you can do is listen. You can't really say very much because you weren't there. So I think the quality, and you have that quality. Thank God he's married you, because I listened, and but I couldn't get it until he sent me the video. I mean, the video is incredible. You see these lights come right up to the car, and from Hawaii, and then a series of events happened where we call them synchronicities. I call them the language of the universe, the language of the ETs, because they don't come and talk to you, regularly. What they do is put you in situations or synchronicities. They put you in coincidences, like 11:11. You're looking at, and you say something and you see 11:11 and all these things. I've learned but I've learned to pay attention to these synchronicities because you have to pay attention because they're talking to you. So, and so, yeah, you did a really good job explaining. But even when we meet, when you and I meet, and Jeff, I mean, anymore, I think I met you so you could take over for me in Crestone. It's like eventually it became, you come, because Jeff spoke twice at Crestone and people just love him. And what I've been encouraging you to do, and you can talk a little bit about this, is to have your own and you explained it very well, but your own assignment or your own dream of doing what you want to do. Because when you and I talk, and the title of this is try to find people you can talk to, people that you can inspire. How do you do that? I'm going to miss you because you're going back to Hawaii. Obviously, you just said that to everybody, and I'm going to miss you guys. But when you leave, I'm going to go. Who am I going to talk to? It's how do you find your tribe? That's the title of this situation. Also, add, Jenny, that your publisher made you take all the esoteric stuff out of your book. And the title of it is This Will Be Funny Later.
Yep.
Well, they made you take that stuff out.
Yeah, they did. Well, I mean, to be fair, I can babble, and sometimes I'm even worse at babbling on paper because I don't have the social cue of the paper telling me to shut up. So I did like sort of just keep going, and a lot of it didn't fit the story. The gist of what I really was talking about in my book was, you know, the fact that for me, highly like sensitive people, right? We have a really hard time in this world. We just do. And that's part of the, like, it's like when you put a cat in water, it's just, they get that look on their face. And all the sensitive people I know have that kind of a hard time as well. So I think like in the book, I was trying to say, hey, I'm a sensitive person and I pick up on things other people don't pick up on. That's like hypervigilance. It's annoying for other people sometimes because I'm like, what'd that mean? What did you mean by that? Because I really am picking up on everything and it's really hard. And part of like most of my book is what it was like to be me, that person, growing up in a situation where, I was in Denver until I was about 8 or 9 and I had an idyllic like early 80s, 70s childhood of riding my bike and disappearing until night and just doing whatever with my friends and going to school. And then we moved to LA for my mom to start her stand-up career, and my parents got divorced, and it was like one thing after another. And being in that situation of just watching what happened with my mom, with her fame, and the way other people perceive you and how that affects you, and a creative person, and my mom's also sensitive, going through that and kind of watching it from the outside, and the things that happened to me because of me not knowing how to kind of deal with my sensitivities around it also. That's mostly what the book's about. And it's about the predatory, like, mental health industry and any privatized healthcare industry. And it comes down to privatized prisons. Like, it sort of just ended up being a lot about those systems that are not built for actual help for people, and my experiences in those places as a teenager. So like I had to edit the book anyway down to something. And to me, that was the most important thing for me to say, because people who I really love, who are younger at the time that I was writing it, were going through exactly what I had been through. So I had a specific person in my mind the whole time I was writing the book of, what I went through, what I was witnessing her going through, the exact same situation pretty much. And so I was kind of telling it about that. Nobody had really been talking about, Paris Hilton since then has started talking about those placements that we were in, because she was in a horrible one in Utah called Provo. And she started doing a lot of advocacy work and stuff around getting those places like either shut down or held accountable, or, being forced to be more transparent about what they're doing there. So right after I wrote the book and it came out and it was kind of about what I had been through, there was this movement of like the troubled teen industry. And so there was kind of an eye on it at the time. So I was glad I wrote the book through that lens, and I'm glad I edited out all the esoteric parts, because now I have all my material for book number 2, which is going to be solely esoteric, and I hope pisses everybody off and makes everyone roll their eyes at me and think I'm ridiculous. That's my real goal.
I was going there. I was going to say, you're going to write the book with all the stuff that made you take out of it, right? So, and not only that, but the book that you're going to write comes from your experience being in Colorado. I mean, you could the experience with Jeff Crestone, being here, being in the deep mountains. I mean, our conversations, which are, really, really, I'm going to miss them so much. I'm going to miss you
I'm
guys.
not dying for the love of God. I
Uh,
have a phone.
I know that, but it's different because we usually meet at a Hawaiian fast food place where it's Hawaiian, and we're supposed to only meet for an hour, but we leave 5 hours later.
That is true.
Poor Ezra, her little baby is just, you can't take it. I feel so sorry for him. But I will not only support your second book, I'm hoping the second book comes out because you have innately, maybe because of the way you lived, this deep wisdom. This deep wisdom. Everybody calls it the divine feminine, but it's a perspective. That the deep wisdom that a woman has, and I'm one of the only women in my field. I'm in a field of all white
Mhm.
older men who are all ufologists and think they know it all. But the perspective I have is I can see the whole forest where they're concentrating on the tree. And that's a good metaphor for saying how important a woman's perspective is in this field, but a woman's perspective in everything, because we can see all the pieces of the puzzle and how they fit together. Our brain just works that way. And I can't wait for book number two. And I'm hoping you're seriously thinking about it.
I mean, I'm always thinking about it, but I thought about the other book for about 35 years before so who knows? But no, I really am thinking about it. It is something that I think about all the time. I think about how the world needs that balance back. And I think a lot of the bad things that are happening right now on the planet are kind of happening because every individual person is sort of separated from their divine feminine because it's taught to roll your eyes at it. Men and women all have these kind of parts of themselves that I think need to be balanced. It's not about men and women. It's about like masculinity and femininity, those energies, those like, the like when I was little, the beings that I spoke to, or it was one being, but it had two faces, and one was female and one was masculine. And they didn't talk. It was like, just knowing. It was like a knowing of information passing back and forth. Um, and I was aware that it was like one sort of voice, but it wasn't a voice. I get it. It's like the best way I can describe like claircognizance or whatever it is that I am good at is that it's as if I just had a conversation with somebody like 5 seconds ago. So I can remember what their voice sounds like, but it's not 100% what it sounds like. But it's like remembering a conversation I had 5 seconds ago. That's what the claircognizance thing kind of feels like. So it'll be real fresh in my mind, and it will just be something I know now that just becomes a part of who I am or the information that I have. But it's not like talking, it's a little bit different. So that's the best way I can think to describe um, what I go through. But when I was little, I knew that masculine and feminine energy were two parts of one whole, and that they don't operate outside of each other. Like you need both to operate, and one's like the low hum and one's kind of like the melody. Um and we all need that. We all need to balance that within our individual selves. And like I think that's the sorting sort of like missing piece to humanity is, it's very hard to have a clear view of anything going on in the world without creating a binary good bad, without that's the outer unhealed kind of thing to do, instead of like go inward and balance your energies that way and ask yourself what it is that you need to learn. I feel I didn't realize that I did, but I have like a different sort of perspective of why we're here, because I always joke and call our experience here reform school earth, because I was in reform schools or whatever they were called at the time. But that's what this feels like to me. It feels like a sort of manufactured setting where you're intentionally triggered over and over and over in order to like ask yourself what it is that you need to heal, what's triggering you, and what the issue is, so that hopefully you can like graduate and get the fuck out of here and not have to come back, which is my main goal. But that's kind of the perspective I have of everything. So everything's through that lens. And I think like a big part of that, like all of it's individual work. If you're talking about anybody outside of yourself or fixated on anything outside of yourself as the bad thing or even the good thing, the thing that you need to have to be happy, to me, every time I've seen myself or anybody else do that, it's not really leading to any kind of peace or happiness. It's usually the opposite. So I think if every single one of us on the planet, all 9 billion of us, decided to do our own personal inner work and look at our journey here on this planet as like a um, healing process to get over what it is that we need to get over so that we can have our heaven on earth, as they say. um, I'm into that idea. I think that that's great. And I think it does have a huge thing to do with like balancing our own masculine and feminine, meaning our narrow perspective where we can look very closely and look at the fine details of something because God's in the details, right? And then also look at the bigger picture, which is the reality, the real reality that everybody is participating in, and be able to have both of those things kind of coexist at once, even though they're, we're told they don't go together, but they do. And I think that's like a big reason that there's so much chaos right now. Like it is out of balance. And it's not out of balance because of men. It's not out of balance because women won't act a certain way. It's not out of balance for those reasons. It's because each one of us look as within, so without. If you're looking outside yourself to figure out and to condemn and to blame or anything, figure out what the problem is, then you're cucking yourself essentially because you can't, like, you have no power there. You have no power outside of yourself, but you have endless power, nothing but power when you turn it internally and do that work, which, that's really what I've been trying to do the last 3 years, especially because I found myself in a place where I did not like myself and I was not doing things that were um, true to who I am as a person, and I think that that's like you lose the ability to hear yourself intuitively when you're putting all your energy outside yourself. And I see a lot of people doing that. And I see myself doing it and I stop myself. And that's how I see when other people are doing it too. So I just think that that plays a bigger role than any of us even imagine or know.
Oh,
I'm babbling.
that's so wise because what I mean in the end it's our work. It's our work we have to do. It's about us. It's not We're not victims. We chose this. And that's why it's so great to talk to you because we have that evolution of consciousness idea. In other words, we're not blaming the world. It was us that we chose this way to go. And before,
Yeah.
we have like 15 more minutes, but what I'd like to do, because you're such an authority on this, is talk about young people and how we can inspire young people. And this is where I'm going to shove in the thing, because I taught high school English for 40 years, and I loved it. And I love those guys. And it wasn't easy walking into the classroom with 16, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. It was not easy. And I was teaching content, but then I realized I'm teaching content, but then I'm really teaching kids. And so we were talking about how we could inspire kids of the future. And with the help of your husband, of Jeff, I wanted to do a kids conference here in Colorado. I chose like a dome, and I wanted to do a conference about UFOs, Star Trek, science fiction, changing the future. And I wanted to do it for 13 to 21-year-olds. And unfortunately, without parents. And unfortunately, it was very difficult to get off the ground. And I remember having that conversation with you. How can we plant positive seeds and inspire kids? And you've got five of them.
Purdue. I think like in my life, because I have, like I said, my oldest is 24. And we had some difficult years when he was like 16. Like every kid's different, first of all. And I think like not trying to streamline kids into one thing. And, everybody I know wants to tell kids certain things, but I don't know very many people that listen to them. And I think I've always listened to younger people because when I was younger and I was locked up, the kids were the ones making sense in there with me. The adults were not. They were like doing the bidding of these kind of privatized prisons or whatever. It wasn't, they weren't to be trusted. And most adults around me weren't to be trusted. My teachers were the one calling the Inquirer and selling them stories about me. And the only people that I really ever related to were like rebellious 13 to 17-year-olds that I was in those places with. So I think that that's part of where my I guess education or wisdom or whatever it's called started. And then I had my first kid when I was 24, and um that was a whole nother thing because I had just gotten out of those places and I sort of just got my bearings as an individual. And then I was a mom, which is what I always wanted to do. So it was great. But I noticed when I would take him to the little mommy and me classes and stuff that it was like everybody was kind of infantilizing, I can't think, their kids. And like, I talked to my kids in goofy voices and stuff, but they weren't listening to them. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then as I went on, I got in fights, not fights, but like arguments with a lot of their teachers because my kids were saying these very true things and they were noticing these big things that were wrong in their schools or their classrooms. And they were saying them respectfully. If they were respectful, I backed them up. If they weren't, then I'm like, you're on your own because you have to be respectful, like when you're talking about those things. But they would go talk to the principal. They talk and like everybody just wanted to shut him up and be like, you're a kid, shut up, sit down. And my kids aren't good at that. Their grandma's Roseanne Barr. They're not going to be able to sit down and shut up. And me being their mom, um, so there's a lot of arguments and stuff, and I'm like, why is there so much of this when it comes to kids? Because they actually, like, if you listen to them for 5 seconds, they're not so deeply into any indoctrination unless they've been in somewhere where that's been the intent. Then yes, they are and can be easily indoctrinated, which is why it's like, you know it's even more imperative that when we see those things that we give those kids a voice and say, you know there are other ways of thinking, or like I'll kind of just throw stuff out there sometimes because um you see kids really trying to struggle to like fit in and figure out where they fit in uh society, and you're just like, they don't need to be doing that. They're the wise ones. They're super smart. My sister Brandy works for a nonprofit called Peace Jam, and she's been working with these kids all over the world, and they're so smart and they have so much to give and they have such great ideas, and her nonprofit really like listens to them, and they build this like technology that helps everybody, and like they do all these really amazing things. And I think like the thing is not so much how to help kids, but like how to stop trying to help kids and let them just sort of lead, or have that, like, we don't know better than them. Like once you're like 24, that's kind of, you kind of carry, you do your personal work and stuff, but you don't have anything to offer anybody but yourself in some regard, I think. um they really know what they're talking about. And my 19-year-old, he scares me sometimes with just how he's so deep and he's so wise and he's so smart. And like I never fed them any particular way of thinking. I would just say what my experience was with them if they'd ask. And he's amazing. And I'm just like, there's nothing that I have to teach this child, but there's a lot that my kids have to teach me. And even Ezra, the 4-year-old, like, I'm like, oh, he'll just kind of throw something out there. And I'm like, that was a lot more wise than anything I have to say. And other kids that I've met my whole life, like, I think we are sort of programmed to look at them as like these little, not accessories necessarily, but like ducklings or something that need to be kind of coddled and stuff. And they're not like that at all. And the kids coming in right now are even smarter. They're even wiser. Like, I don't know if anybody listened to the telepathy tapes podcast, but these nonverbal kids, the kids that they kind of shove off to the side and say, oh, they're dumb, they're never going to understand anything, any of that. Turns out they understand everything and they're communicating on a psychic level with each other in this other realm. Like, that's what's going on with these kids. And it's like, as you get older, you kind of stop listening to that part of yourself. And I think, like, if we kind of just let them lead, and they kind of regulate each other too, because I'll see one of them say something that might be kind of mean, and the other one's like, that was rude. Like, they'll call each other out. I don't know that we have anything to offer them. I don't. Like, I mean, aside from a warm meal and unconditional love, like, they seem to have the rest sort of handled if you get out of the way a little bit. Um, I'm talking about kids who are in situations or live in places where they have the luxury of free thought, and not pure indoctrination or that kind of stuff, which is, I think, as a mom and a potential grandma, since I'm 49, I have friends that have been grandmas since they were 36, which is what happens when you grow up in institutions. So I'm like on the late end of grandmahood, and I'm just like, or the early end, whatever. I just think, like, you know, when you're watching the world that we've kind of created, I think to be stubborn about what we've created and call these kids ingrates, or say like they shouldn't drink coffee, and if they didn't drink coffee then they would be able to afford a house. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. That's like late stage capitalism issues and stuff like that, which we all have the capacity to do something about. There are smart ways to do everything. And, like permaculture, like when you think about having a farm or a homestead, and a lot of people are more attracted to having homesteads now, which I love, and I did for a long time. Um, when you don't have that scarcity and you're not freaking out, and you know that you can kind of grow your own food or take care of your family on that level, grow your own medicine, be connected to the earth and nature and stuff like that, a lot of the issues that you would have in like a city kind of disappear too. So I think they're like, everything's about balancing everything that we have, and instead of doing away with this and doing away with that, and like, that didn't work, that's awful. Like DEI is a great example of that. There's so many good things that have come out of that, like those policies and political. I don't want to get political or whatever, but there's room for growth there. They haven't included a certain group of people, and like if they did include that group of people, then then the whole thing wouldn't have to be thrown away. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can improve on things that already exist without trashing them or setting them on fire, and we can use the wisdom of our ancestors and all the indigenous people who lived without, like, industry or tech. We can do those things and incorporate technology and industry into that in a good way. So I think we're like on the precipice of that as people. Like, we're right where we get to choose like who we want to be as a people, and incorporate the kids into that and listen to them and their wisdom. I don't think that we need to strong arm the universe anymore.
Well, that sounds, those are a lot of heavy thoughts. This is when I talk to you.
Sorry.
You've got like five themes in there, and I'm going, oh my God, which one do we talk about next? It's like you said so many important things, but you're saying them from experience. You're saying them from having lived a life, and you're saying them from your experience. So I'd love to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to interact with you. So I'm going to give you like 4 minutes. If you want to take away from this conversation something that would inspire people, because both of us are very positive thinking. We're both positive thinking people. What could you say that, in other words, you're going to be in Hawaii. You're going to be changing a little bit of your lifestyle. What kinds of things would you like to walk away with? What kinds of things could you tell us that would inspire us?
I hope it's inspirational, but I think reframing everything right now is a big deal, because getting outside of our subjective experience and being able to look at things from a different perspective, I think that alone changes things for us as far as feeling hopeful or being able to decide what part we play and want to give back to what's going on. So like just reframing things as like, this horrible thing that happened to me is like, okay, let's say this happened for me, then what would that mean? That means that like maybe I, as part of a soul contract, put this person in front of me in order to trigger a series of things in myself that would allow me to look at this sort of darkness or shadow self or shadow side and work through it and um, like transmute it. So I think reframing things in your own world, if you're ever feeling like either victimized or angry, and I feel that those ways a lot. Like I've reframed things to myself and go, okay, like let's say that I was going to create the perfect situation for me to have to look at me being too trusting. What would I do? I'd put this person, this contractor in front of me to rip me off for like whatever amount of money for doing the electrical in my house. And then I would look at how I played into that and what part I played. And then I could work through that and transmute it. And then I wouldn't need that to happen over and over again. So then I can let that go and hopefully not have that happen. And I think like when you look at everything as soul contracts and an opportunity to do shadow work in order to transcend this lovely planet and move on so you don't have to come back, that to me is, if everybody could do that, there'd be a lot less suffering. That's, I think, probably the gist.
Whoa, wow, I love it. I love it. I'm not going to ever miss you, but we are going to still talk. And
Yes, we will.
I'm hoping that you'll do more podcasts and more of these. And it's just mind blowing, the wisdom that you have from experience, So thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording now so that people can ask
Thank you.